This is the story of the rescue of Patty, a engine that I bought. It was just loose. This is the original vanity cover. And you and I, my friendly viewers of my videos, just love getting these old mowers and get them going again that have been rejected, discarded. This one was just a loose engine, and it is a Quantum XTE 4.5 horsepower. He claims it ran at one time, and he was going to try and get it going, but just lost interest in it. So it's a this mower was, you can tell by the date here, is from the way these work is that's the year, so it's 03/08/14. Okay, so that is the year, the month, and the day. So this mower was put out the door by Briggs and Stratton on August 14th, 2003. So it's year, month, day. The spark plug seems to be okay. It had no blade on it, and I did want to show you what I had to do with this because I could not get the adapter on. And I thought, well, I've got the wrong size adapter. This is a adapter I'm not used to. Let me show you that real quick. We're going to tilt this thing back. Like I always tell you, that's the best way to work on these mowers. Don't tip them on the side if you can possibly avoid that, because you end up, if you move this blade around, which you often have to do to check it to see if the crankshaft is bent or not, you end up having to move this blade around. You end up throwing fuel where you don't want it, or you throw oil where you don't want it. You can ruin your air filter, and then you got to go find another one and that kind of thing. And with the paper ones, if you get them soaked with oil or gas, you really can ruin them, especially with oil. Now this engine wasn't made to fit with this deck, but it's very close. But I could not get the adapter on. And I thought, well, it's not the larger crankshaft, it's got to be the standard crankshaft. And so what happens with these engines when they're taken off, and there was no adapter on it, the previous owner or owners, somebody is setting this thing down, and they're touching the crankshaft to the ground, and you can bump that those corners of that crankshaft so that the groove that's in the crankshaft has these little sharp corners, and if you bump them good, then they'll get in the way and you won't be able to get that adapter on. So what you have to do, and what I had to do in this case, is you find your groove that the adapter slides into, and you take a metal file and you just hit those little corners two or three times. It's because you're not going to hurt it, because the crankshaft or the adapter is going way up in that groove anyway. You're just trying to be able to get this thing on. So, hit it with some sandpaper, knock the junk off, hit it with a wired brush, whatever you need to do. But if it still won't go on, just take a file and go that way, and then right on the corners of that groove in the crankshaft. And once I did that, my adapter slid right on. So that solved that problem. I don't like it when the blades ride up too high in the deck, and that happens sometimes when you have an engine you're installing on a different deck and it's not 100% match. But you can kind of work with those a little bit. I keep the lock washers off of the blade screws that I get, because I know they will fit snug around that screw, and I'll put 2 or 3 of those lock washers inside the adapter, and that'll help get this thing attached. They cinch down, and then instead of being you know, almost half an inch or an inch higher up here. It's now within probably a little less than a half inch from the edge of the deck. And that's good. You don't want the blade way up in there, because then to cut the grass, you end up having to drop the deck with your wheel adjusters, and then you're dragging the deck on the ground in order to get the blade to contact the grass. So you want to try and get that blade where it's pretty close to the edge of the deck. And so that's how I had to do it on this one. So that's the situation with the blade. For some reason, he had removed the muffler off this thing. Let me get this mower down now. He's removed the muffler off, so I'll have to reinstall that or find one. Now, I mean, I got the muffler. I've just, you know, I'm not sure if he included the screws or not. And in order to test it, it still had the spring on. And this is the way I do that. Let me find my homemade tool. Where did it go? Here we go. In order to test this, and I'm not ready to hook up the brake. I've got the brake that came with the deck. I may have to attach it here, but I want to test this to make sure it's going to fire and make sure it's going to run. So what you have to do is take this very powerful spring off that gets compressed when you push the bail down. And so, you know, you put this little, like I said, very strong wire on here. I put this little loop under here, and I pop that spring off. And then just for testing, see, this mower is going to fire now because I've got this rubber band keeping the kill switch open. And so when if I'm lucky enough and it fires and it runs, then I'll just come and do this, and that'll kill it, because you can watch this move. This is where it's touching. You see that? You see that switch move? Okay, so that means that'll shut it off. And then if it runs and everything, then I'll reconnect this spring, or I'll just install that kill switch over here, one or the other. So let's take let's do some more investigating. Some of you veterans will recognize this problem immediately. Obviously, there's a lot of dust around there, but this part of the linkage has been pushed down and is touching that metal, and so that may not be in the right place, and so I want to get that up. So I'm just going to get a screwdriver in here. These things are designed to be bendable, so I'm going to push it up a little bit more. There we go. All right, let's see if this thing is working the way it's supposed to. It's a little bit sticky, so I assume the carburetor is sticky, but it's not really stretching. It's not stretching that spring at all, you see. So I'm thinking that that's not going to run right. So I need to at least put a little tension on that spring. So let me get my needle nose pliers, and I'm going to swing this out a little bit, because you want a little bit of tension on this spring. Let's see if that helped. Yeah, that's better. Okay, so now let's go around the other side and see what it looks like around the carburetor and the air filter. That's a pretty clean cover. That's always encouraging. That hose is in bad shape. I'll replace that with some new hose. So let's take a look under here. Gonna get our 5/16 socket out and take a look, see if it's even got an air filter, and if it does, what kind of shape it's in. Wow, that's not too bad, folks, not too bad. All right, let's give it the old test here. I'm going to hit it a couple of times, knock the dust off, and then here's your test. This is how you test to see if this thing's clean or not. You get a little flashlight, and if you're seeing light, which we are, this filter is just fine. There's no problem with that. So I'll probably knock the big chunks off, but that's real clean under there, so I'm optimistic about that. The question is this mower gonna have compression? So let me put the camera in the holster and we'll check that together. I'm gonna check a couple other things too. On Patty, the Quantum XTE, that is, I'm trying to save by putting it on this nice Murray deck from another mower that I could not save. At least the engine I couldn't save. Here's the cord. I've got the engine brake off because I'm using that handy little rubber band there. Now I'm going to slowly pull that cord up and see if it's got compression or not. I'm going to go ahead and take the spark plug off. It's not going to start, but you know the rules. Oh yeah, that's got good compression. Let's hook this up here. This has got one of those aluminum stops right here, which these things kind of drive me crazy. Sometimes I'll just take them off. It's not touching the head. It's designed to keep the rope from retracting all the way in there, but I don't know, I'm not sure what the point of that really is. So I don't usually install these back on when I replace the cord. So that all looks good. Now I'm going to check the oil, make sure it's got oil. I'm not going to worry about the condition of the oil just yet. I just want to make sure it's got some. And by the way, I always like to take off the dirt around this so it doesn't hit that with a brush. So that when I take the dipstick out, I'm not throwing dirt into the crankcase. And I also clean around there because if I ever want to replace the carburetor or something, this dipstick has to swing out of the way, and that's another way to throw a bunch of crud down the crankcase. So I'll get a toothbrush and go around the base of this, brush, get all that junk off of there so it won't fall down into the crankcase if I have to swing this out. But right now, I'll get more dirt off of there. Okay. I see a little bit of oil. Let's see here. Here's what these dipsticks look like. I wanted to show you this. They've got these two little holes, and what you want is to have those holes filled with oil, and then that's the perfect level. That little arrow you see pressed in there means do not go above that. Do not overfill above that zero. If your oil is in this where the cross hatching is, you're safe. If you get down to this hole, as long as you see a little bit of oil there, then you're okay. That if you get below that, when you're not, all you're seeing is a little bit of oil on the end, that means you better add some. But even then, people make the mistake of thinking, oh, I'm going to get me a quart of oil and top this son of a gun off, No, it takes about a teacup. Otherwise, you overfill it, and then you got a smoking lawnmower. So I'm going to put this dipstick back in here, and we're going to see how much oil is in this mower. Hopefully there is some. Okay, this crankcase is bone dry, people. And I'm not surprised at that, because sometimes when people have loose engines, they don't want the oil going everywhere and spilling out, so they drain the oil out. So I'm going to put enough oil in here to get it above that first little hole in the dipstick and then the cross hatching before I try and start this mower. Otherwise, it'll tear it up almost immediately. All right, so I'm signing off for now. We'll check back in with you after I get some oil in Patty.